The twin sons of Vexus Prime beat down on the dusty lanes of the Kara Bazaar like twin hammers on an anvil, turning the air into shimmering glass and the sand beneath boots into something closer to hot ash. Joran wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, squinting against the glare as he pushed through the throng of merchants, scavengers, and off-worlders haggling over everything from plasma-forged trinkets to live sand-crawlers in woven cages. He hadn't come for any of that. He'd come for fruit, real fruit, not the nutrient-paced rations the Coalition outpost doled out like punishment. Something sweet, something that reminded him of Earth's orchards, even if it grew on a vine that bled blue sap and smelled faintly of cinnamon and ozone. Joran wasn't a soldier anymore, not really. He'd traded his pulse rifle for a salvager's license after the Third Dust War, and now he lived in a rusted-out hab unit on the edge of the dunes, fixing broken comms arrays for credits and dreaming of green hills he'd probably never see again. But today, he was just a man with a pouch of alloy coins and a craving for something that didn't taste like metal and regret. The fruit stalls clustered near the western arch of the market, where the shade of a massive, fossilized sky whale rib offered some relief from the heat. Vendors called out in guttural Vexian, their voices rising over the clatter of hovercarts and the hiss of steam cookers. Joran paused at a stall draped in silken canopies dyed the deep purple of twilight storms. The fruits here glowed faintly, amber globes pulsing like tiny hearts, spiky crimson pods that dripped nectar, and clusters of pear-shaped orbs that chimed softly when touched. He reached for one, its skin cool and velvety. "Careful," came a voice, low and smooth like wind over glass. "That one sings when ripe, but bites when not." Joran turned. She stood just behind the stall, arms crossed, leaning against a post carved with ancient glyphs. Her skin was the color of jade kissed by emerald flame, smooth and luminous even in the harsh light. Her hair, thick, wild, and the deep red of molten copper, was braided with tiny silver bells that chimed with every slight movement. She wore a tunic of woven desert silk, patched in places but clean, and around her neck hung a pendant shaped like a crescent moon cradling a star. Her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and the gold of desert sunsets, watched him with a mix of amusement and wariness. "I didn't know fruit could bite," Joran said, pulling his hand back slowly. She smiled, just a little. "Not all fruit is what it seems. Some things look sweet but carry thorns. Others look strange but heal broken bones." She stepped forward, her bare feet silent on the packed sand. "You're not from here. Off-worlder. Used to be Coalition," he admitted. "Now I'm just here." She nodded as if that explained everything. "I am Lyra," she said. "This is my stall." Joran blinked. "Yours? I thought the vendor was. The old man with 3 fingers and a pet scorpion?" She laughed, a sound like wind chimes caught in a sudden breeze. "He's my uncle. He lets me run the stall while he naps under the duneworm bones. Says I have a better eye for what travelers want." Joran glanced at the fruits again, then back at her. There was something in her gaze, something tired, but not broken, like a blade that had been bent but never snapped. "I just wanted something to eat," he said. "Then take this." She plucked a small, pearlescent fruit from a hidden basket beneath the counter. It shimmered like mother of pearl. "It's called a silva bloom. Grows only in the oasis of whispers, deep in the crimson wastes. One bite, and you'll taste rain, even here." He hesitated. "How much?" She tilted her head. "For you? No credits. But you must promise to eat it slowly. And tell me what you remember." He took it. The fruit was cool, almost humming in his palm. He bit into it gently. Instantly, the market vanished. He was standing in a field under a soft gray sky. Rain fell. Not the acid storms of Vexus, but gentle, clean rain that soaked his hair and filled the air with the scent of wet earth and apple blossoms. His mother's garden. He hadn't thought of it in years. Tears pricked his eyes before he could stop them. When he came back to himself, Lyra was watching him, her expression unreadable. "You remembered something good," she said softly. He nodded, throat tight. "Yeah, something good." They stood in silence for a moment, the market noise fading into a distant hum. Then a commotion erupted down the lane, shouts, the clang of metal, the whine of repulsor engines. A squad of iron-scale mercenaries, their armor scorched and dented, shoved through the crowd, their leader, a hulking brute with a scarred snout and cybernetic eyes, barking orders in guttural trade-speak. "Search every stall," he roared. "The fugitive is here. Green skin, red hair. She stole the heartstone of Kara." Joran's blood ran cold. He looked at Lyra. Her face had gone pale beneath her green skin. She didn't run, didn't flinch, just met his eyes with a quiet resolve that made his chest ache. "They're lying," she whispered. "I didn't steal it. I was protecting it." Before he could ask what she meant, the mercenary spotted her. "There!" the leader bellowed, drawing a plasma cutter. "Seize her!" Instinct took over. Joran grabbed Lyra's hand. "Run!" They bolted through the market, weaving between stalls, knocking over baskets of glowing fungi and jars of fermented sky eel. Shouts followed them. A bolt of plasma seared the air beside Joran's head, scorching a tapestry of star maps into ash. Lyra pulled him into a narrow alley slick with condensation from a coolant pipe overhead. She knew the maze of Kara Bazaar like the lines on her palms, ducking through hidden doorways, scrambling over low walls, slipping into shadowed alcoves where only locals dared tread. Finally, breathless, they crouched behind a stack of empty water drums in a dead-end courtyard. The sounds of pursuit faded, but not the danger. "Why are they after you?" Joran asked, heart-pounding. Lyra unclasped her pendant and pressed it into his hand. Inside the crescent moon casing, a tiny stone pulsed with a soft, golden light. "This is the Heartstone," she said. "It's not a gem. It's a seed. The last seed of the Great Bloom, the tree that once purified Vexus's air before the wars poisoned the soil. My husband, he was its guardian. When the iron scales came to burn the grove, he hid the seed with me and stayed behind to fight." Her voice broke, just slightly. "He didn't come back." Joran stared at the stone, felt warm, alive. "So you're not a thief. You're a guardian." "I'm a widow," she corrected. But there was no self-pity in her voice, only steel wrapped in sorrow. "And now they think I'll lead them to the grove's ruins, where more seeds might still sleep in the earth. But if they dig there with their machines, they'll destroy what's left forever." Joran exhaled slowly. He'd come to buy fruit. Instead, he'd stumbled into a war he didn't sign up for, and into the orbit of a woman who carried the fate of a world in her hands. "I can help," he said. She looked at him, surprised. "Why would you? You don't even know me." "I know you gave me a memory of rain," he said simply. "And that's worth more than any credit chip." A faint smile touched her lips. "You're strange, off-worlder. Call me Joran." "Joran?" she repeated, as if testing the shape of his name. "Then listen closely. There's a ship hidden in the salt flats. My husband's old skiff. If we can reach it, we can get to the oasis before the iron scales do. But the flats are patrolled. And the sand there, it swallows sound, but not secrets." They waited until nightfall, when the twin moons cast long, cool shadows and the desert exhaled its stored heat in sighing gusts. Wrapped in desert cloaks dyed to match the dunes, they slipped out of the village like ghosts. The journey was brutal, scorching by day, freezing by night, with sand vipers coiling in the rocks and sky predators circling overhead. But Lyra moved with a grace that defied the harshness of the land, and Joran, though clumsy at first, learned to follow her lead, reading the wind, listening for the hum of patrol drones, drinking only when she did. On the third night, as they huddled in the lee of a salt-crusted ridge, Lyra shared her water flask with him. Their fingers brushed. Neither pulled away. "You never told me why you left the coalition," she said quietly. Joran stared at the stars. "Different from Earth's, brighter, stranger. I got tired of choosing who lived and who died," he said. "Out here, it felt like every order was a lie wrapped in duty. I wanted to fix things, not break them. And now you're helping me break their plans," she said, a hint of humor in her voice. "Only if their plans involve killing trees and chasing widows," he replied. She laughed softly, the sound mingling with the whisper of the wind. In that moment, something shifted between them, not just alliance but understanding. Two broken people finding a reason to stand together. But the iron scales were relentless. They caught up at the edge of the salt flats, just as the first light of dawn painted the horizon in streaks of rose and gold. 3 skiffs descended from the clouds, engines roaring like angry beasts. Plasma bolts lit the air. "Run for the ship," Lyra shouted, shoving Joran toward a half-buried hatch in the salt crust. "I'll hold them off." "No," he yelled back, grabbing her arm. "We go together." She hesitated, then nodded. They sprinted, sand kicking up behind them. A bolt grazed Joran's shoulder, searing through fabric and skin. He gritted his teeth, kept running. Lyra activated a small device on her wrist, a sonic emitter, and a pulse of sound shattered the nearest skiff's canopy, sending the pilot tumbling out. The hidden ship, a sleek, sand-colored vessel shaped like a stingray, rose from the salt as they reached it. Joran hit the hatch release. They tumbled inside just as another plasma blast cratered the ground where they'd stood. Inside, the cockpit hummed to life under Lyra's touch. She knew the controls like an old friend. The ship shot skyward, weaving through the iron-scale skiffs with dizzying speed. Joran manned the rear turret, his old training kicking in. He fired not to kill but to disable. One skiff spun out, trailing smoke. Another veered away. As they broke atmosphere, the planet below stretched out in a tapestry of red dunes, black canyons, and the distant glimmer of the Oasis of Whispers. A green jewel in a sea of rust. "We made it," Joran breathed, slumping into the co-pilot seat. Lyra didn't answer right away. She was looking at him, really looking. At the burn on his shoulder, the exhaustion in his eyes, the stubborn set of his jaw. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." She reached out, her green fingers brushing the wound on his shoulder. A soft glow emanated from her palm. Her people's healing gift, passed down through generations of bloomkeepers. The pain lessened instantly. "Thank you," he murmured. "For healing you?" she asked. "For trusting me." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Maybe the Silva Bloom knew what it was doing when it chose you." The ship sailed on, toward the oasis, toward whatever waited beneath the ancient trees. The iron scales would regroup. The war wasn't over. But for now, in the quiet hum of the cockpit, with the stars stretching endlessly ahead and a green-skinned woman with red hair beside him, Joran felt something he hadn't in years. Hope. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something sweeter than any fruit. The Oasis of Whispers wasn't just green. It was alive in a way that defied reason. Towering silver-bark trees pulsed with inner light, their leaves shimmering like liquid emerald, and the air hummed with a low, resonant frequency that vibrated in Joran's bones. Vines coiled and uncoiled like sleeping serpents, and pools of water glowed faintly turquoise, reflecting the twin moons above like liquid sky. Felt sacred, forbidden, and utterly vulnerable. Lyra guided the skiff to a hidden landing pad carved into the roots of the largest tree. The Heartwood, she called it. As they stepped out, the ground beneath their feet warmed slightly, as if greeting her. She placed a hand on the bark, whispering words in a language that sounded like wind through crystal chimes. The tree responded. A soft chime echoed through the grove, and a hidden path opened in the undergrowth. "This is where the bloom sleeps," she said, voice hushed. "Not just one tree, a network, a living memory of Vexus before the wars." Joran followed her through the luminous underbrush, his pulse quickening. The heartstone in his pocket seemed to thrum in time with the grove. But as they reached the central clearing, a circular space ringed by ancient monoliths etched with spiraling glyphs, Lyra froze. The ground was scorched. Blackened roots snaked across the earth like veins of a dying creature. The air here was stale, silent. The hum had stopped. "No," Lyra whispered, falling to her knees. "They've been here." Joran scanned the area. Boot prints, mechanical, heavy, led to a freshly dug pit in the center. The soil was churned, stained with something dark and oily. And beside the pit lay a shattered drone, its lens cracked, its chassis scorched from the inside out. "They tried to extract something," Joran said, crouching. But the grove fought back. Lyra's hands trembled as she touched the blackened earth. The bloom doesn't just purify air. It defends itself. Anything that threatens it, it consumes, rewrites, turns invaders into part of the soil. She looked up, eyes wide with dawning horror. Unless they used a null field generator, that would suppress the bloom's defenses long enough to dig. Which means they knew exactly what they were doing, Joran finished grimly. Before she could respond, a low rumble shook the ground. Not thunder, engines. They scrambled back to the skiff just as 3 iron-scale dropships descended through the canopy, their hulls bristling with weaponry. But these weren't standard mercenary craft. They bore the insignia of the Vexian Sovereign Council, the ruling body that had signed the peace accords after the Dust War. "They're not mercenaries," Joran breathed. "They're government." Lyra's face went pale. "The council swore to protect the bloom." "Swore," Joran said bitterly, "and lied." The dropships deployed not soldiers, but machines, tall, skeletal harvesters with articulated arms ending in plasma drills and containment fields. They moved with eerie precision, ignoring the grove's attempts to repel them. A null field generator hummed to life from the lead ship, casting a dome of silence over the clearing. The trees dimmed. The hum died completely. "They're going to strip the grove bare," Lyra said, voice cracking. "Take every root, every seed, every memory, and sell it to off-world biotech cartels." Joran's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned. But then he remembered something. The old Coalition comms array he'd salvaged weeks ago, still sitting in his hab unit. It had a long-range burst transmitter. If he could get a signal out, he might reach the Free Colonies Alliance, a loose network of rebels and idealists who still believed in the old treaties. "We need to stall them," he said. "Long enough for me to send a distress call." "How?" Lyra asked. Joran looked at the skiff, then at the grove. "You said the bloom rewrites what threatens it. What if we give it something to rewrite?" Understanding dawned in her eyes. "You want to overload the null field generator with living matter. Trigger a feedback loop." "Exactly. But we'll need a distraction." Lyra nodded, already moving. She opened a panel beneath the skiff's cockpit and pulled out a slender staff. "Her husband's," she explained. "Carved from heartwood, tipped with a shard of the original bloom crystal. This can channel the grove's energy. But it's dangerous. If I lose control—" "You won't," Joran said firmly. "I'll cover you." As the harvesters began drilling into the central root cluster, Joran fired up the skiff and launched it toward the dropships, weaving through their fire with reckless precision. He didn't aim to destroy, he aimed to provoke. One harvester turned toward him, its drill whining. That was the opening Lyra needed. She sprinted into the grove, staff raised. The moment she crossed the edge of the null field, the grove responded. Vines lashed out, wrapping around her arms, her legs, but not to harm, to connect. Golden light surged up the staff, arcing into the air like lightning. The trees flared back to life, their glow intensifying. The Ironscale commander shouted orders. 2 soldiers leapt from the dropship, pulse rifles raised. Joran banked hard, firing a volley that forced them to take cover. But a lucky shot clipped the skiff stabilizer. The ship lurched, smoke trailing from its port wing. He crash-landed in a clearing 50 meters away, tumbling out just before the fuel cells ignited. He crawled from the wreckage, ribs screaming, vision blurred. Through the smoke, he saw Lyra standing at the heart of the grove, staff plunged into the earth, light radiating from her in waves. The null field flickered, but then a new sound, a deep, resonant thrum, like a heartbeat from the planet itself. The ground split open, not from the harvester's drills, but from below. Something ancient stirred. From the fissure rose a figure, tall, emerald-skinned like Lyra, but with bark-like armor fused to its limbs, eyes glowing white with raw bloom energy. It moved with unnatural grace, tendrils of living root coiling around its arms. The Bloom Sentinel, guardian of the grove, awakened. The Ironscale soldiers froze. Even their machines stuttered. The Sentinel turned its gaze on Lyra and bowed. She gasped. "It recognizes me as the new keeper." But the moment of awe was shattered by a deafening explosion. The lead dropship fired a seismic charge into the fissure, trying to bury the Sentinel. The blast knocked Lyra off her feet. The staff flew from her hands, skittering across the scorched earth. Joran dragged himself up, limping toward her. "Lyra!" She scrambled for the staff, but a shadow fell over her. The Ironscale commander stood above her, cybernetic eyes gleaming, plasma cutter humming in his grip. "Hand over the Heartstone, widow," he growled, "or I'll peel that green hide off you strand by strand." Joran didn't think. He lunged. He tackled the commander from the side, sending them both crashing into a monolith. The plasma cutter skidded away. They grappled in the dirt, the commander's strength monstrous, but Joran had desperation on his side. He drove his elbow into the mercenary's throat, then rolled, grabbing a shard of crystalline root from the ground. He plunged it into the commander's chest. The man screamed, not in pain, but in transformation. His cybernetics sparked, his skin darkened, and within seconds, he was rooted to the spot, bark spreading over his armor, his eyes turning glassy green. The bloom had claimed him. Panting, Joran helped Lyra up. "We need to go. Now." But the Sentinel blocked their path. It raised a hand, not in threat, but in warning. Then it pointed toward the sky. Joran followed its gesture. A massive vessel hung in the upper atmosphere. Sleek, obsidian black, shaped like a scorpion's tail. No insignia. No transponder signal. A ghost ship. "The Obsidian Fleet," Lyra whispered, terror in her voice. "They're not with the Council." They're worse. Who are they? Joran asked. Raiders. Biopirates. They don't want to sell the bloom, they want to weaponize it. Turn it into a plague that rewrites entire populations into obedient thralls. The sentinel turned to Lyra and placed a hand on her forehead. A vision flooded her mind. Cities choked in unnatural vines. People with glowing eyes marching in unison. Skies turned green with spores. She cried out, falling to her knees. They're coming for the Heartstone, she said, voice shaking. Because it's not just a seed. It's a key. It can awaken every dormant bloom node across the galaxy. Joran's blood ran cold. Then we can't let them have it. But the Heartstone wasn't in his pocket anymore. He patted his coat. Empty. Panic surged. Then he remembered. During the crash, it must have fallen out. They searched frantically, sifting through ash and shattered crystal. Nothing. Until a soft chime led them to the edge of the clearing. There, nestled in the roots of a half-dead sapling, the Heartstone pulsed gently. And beside it, curled protectively, was a small creature Joran had never seen before. Feline in shape, but with translucent fur that shifted color like a mood ring, and 6 eyes that blinked in sequence. It chirped at them, then nudged the stone toward Lyra with its nose. It's a bloom wisp, she said, awed. They only appear when the grove is in mortal danger. They're guides. The wisp leapt onto her shoulder and pointed with its tail. Not toward the skiff, but deeper into the oasis, toward a cave hidden behind a waterfall of glowing liquid. The seed vault, Lyra realized. My husband told me about it. Failsafe. If the grove falls, the Heartstone must be taken there to activate the planetary network. But the Obsidian fleet is descending, Joran said, hearing the whine of atmospheric entry. Then we run, she said, clutching the stone. They sprinted through the grove as the sky darkened. The sentinel stayed behind, raising its arms as the first obsidian drop pods slammed into the earth, disgorging figures in black carapace armor, their faces hidden behind masks that pulsed with stolen bloom energy. The cave entrance was narrow, slick with luminescent moss. Inside, the air was cool, humming with latent power. The walls were lined with crystalline shelves holding hundreds of seeds, each glowing faintly, each a potential new grove. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal shaped like a blooming flower. Lyra placed the Heartstone in its center. The moment it touched the surface, the entire cave lit up. A map of Vexus Prime and beyond appeared in the air, dotted with thousands of green points. Dormant bloom nodes, on moons, on dead worlds, even near human colonies. It's a galactic archive, Joran breathed. But then the ground shook violently. A blast tore through the cave entrance. Obsidian raiders poured in, weapons raised. Lyra grabbed Joran's hand. There's one more thing the vault can do. What? It can teleport the Heartstone and its keeper to the next node. But only one can go. No, Joran said instantly. We're not splitting up. The wisp can guide you to the next node if I stay, she said, tears in her eyes. You're human. They won't expect a human to carry the bloom's legacy. I'm not leaving you. Before she could argue, the lead raider fired. A bolt of dark energy struck the pedestal. The Heartstone shrieked, a sound like 1,000 trees screaming. The teleportation sequence activated prematurely. Light engulfed them. Not just Lyra, not just Joran. Both. The last thing Joran saw was Lyra's hand gripping his, her red hair blazing like fire in the storm of light, and the obsidian raiders lunging forward, too late. Then nothing. Silence. Cold. He opened his eyes. They were on a frozen moon, orbiting a gas giant streaked with violet storms. Ice stretched in every direction, but beneath the surface, something green pulsed faintly. Another node. Another chance. Lyra lay beside him, unconscious but breathing. The Heartstone rested on her chest, still glowing. The wisp chirped from Joran's shoulder, its fur now shimmering silver in the moonlight. Far above, the obsidian fleet sensors would already be locking on. They had minutes, maybe seconds. Joran gently lifted Lyra into his arms. Hold on, he whispered. We're not done yet. And as the first drop pod streaked through the icy atmosphere, he ran, not away, but toward the pulse beneath the ice, toward the next chapter of a war neither of them had asked for. But both were now destined to finish. The ice beneath Joran's boots cracked with every step, thin and treacherous, glowing faintly where the bloom's pulse radiated upward from below. He carried Lyra as gently as he could, her head resting against his chest, her breath shallow but steady. The wisp clung to his shoulder, its 6 eyes scanning the horizon, ears twitching at the distant whine of descending engines. Above, the violet-streaked gas giant loomed like a sleeping god, indifferent to the tiny drama unfolding on its frozen moon. He didn't know where he was going, only that the green pulse beneath the ice grew stronger the farther he ran from the drop zone. The air bit at his skin, sharp and metallic, but the heartstone on Lyra's chest radiated a soft warmth that kept them both from freezing. It was as if the bloom itself was shielding them, buying time. Then Lyra stirred. Her golden eyes fluttered open. For a moment, confusion clouded her gaze, then recognition, then urgency. "Joran," she rasped, pushing herself upright in his arms. "Put me down. We need to move faster." "You're hurt," he said. "I'm alive," she countered, already sliding to her feet. She swayed slightly but steadied herself against his shoulder. "The vault didn't just teleport us, it linked us to this node. But the Obsidian Fleet will track the Heartstone's resonance. We have to activate the seed before they lock onto our coordinates." Joran nodded, scanning the icy plain. "Where's the entrance?" Lyra closed her eyes, placing a hand on the ice. The Heartstone pulsed in response. A low hum vibrated through the ground, and a pattern of glowing green lines spread outward from her feet, like roots searching for home. "There," she said, pointing toward a massive ice spire shaped like a twisted helix. Beneath that, they ran. Behind them, 3 drop pods slammed into the ice, shattering the surface in plumes of frost and steam. Black armored figures emerged, their movements unnaturally synchronized, their masks flickering with stolen bloom energy. They didn't shout, didn't speak at all. They simply advanced, weapons humming with dark plasma. Joran glanced back. "They're faster than I expected." "They're not fully organic anymore," Lyra said grimly. "The Obsidian Fleet grafts bloom tissue onto their soldiers. It gives them strength, speed, but it also hollows them out. They're puppets, empty shells wearing skin." "Charming," Joran muttered. They reached the base of the ice spire just as the first raider fired. A bolt of corrupted energy struck the ice beside them, melting it instantly into black sludge that hissed and bubbled. Lyra pressed her palm to the spire. The Heartstone flared. The ice groaned and split open, revealing a spiraling staircase descending into the moon's core. "Go," she urged. They plunged into the depths, the cold giving way to a strange, humid warmth. The walls here were not ice, but smooth organic crystal, veined with pulsing green light. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the surfaces, casting shifting shadows. The air smelled of ozone and something sweet, like crushed petals. At the bottom of the stairs lay a chamber unlike anything Joran had ever seen. It was a cavernous dome, its ceiling lost in mist. In the center floated a massive seed, translucent, swirling with galaxies of emerald and gold light. Around it, suspended in midair, were hundreds of smaller seeds, orbiting like planets around a living sun. This wasn't just a node. It was a cradle. "The Genesis Vault," Lyra whispered, awestruck. "I thought it was a myth." "What does it do?" Joran asked. "It doesn't just awaken dormant nodes," she said, stepping forward. "It rewrites ecosystems, restores dead worlds. But it needs a keeper to guide it, a living mind bonded to the Heartstone." She turned to him, eyes blazing with determination. "That's why they want it." With this, the Obsidian Fleet could terraform entire systems, and seed them with their own twisted version of the bloom. A bloom that obeys only them. Before she could say more, the ice above shattered. Raiders rappelled down, their boots clanging against the crystal floor. More poured in from hidden fissures in the walls. They surrounded the chamber, forming a silent, deadly circle. From the center of their ranks stepped a figure taller than the rest, clad in armor fused with living vines that writhed like serpents. Their mask was different, smooth, featureless, except for 2 slits where eyes should be, glowing with cold green fire. "The Keeper?" the figure said, voice layered with echoes, as if many spoke through one throat. "You have led us well." Lyra stepped in front of Joran. "You're not a keeper. You're a thief." "I am evolution," the figure replied. "The bloom was never meant to sleep. It was meant to rule, and I will be its voice." Joran's hand went to his sidearm, but it was gone, lost in the crash on Vexus. He had nothing but his wits and a stubborn refusal to die today. Then the wisp leapt from his shoulder, landing on the central seed. Chirped once, loud and clear. The entire chamber shuddered. The orbiting seeds flared. The green light intensified, flooding the room in a blinding radiance. The raiders staggered back, their grafted bloom tissue reacting violently. Some screamed as vines burst from their armor, others collapsed, writhing. But the leader stood firm. "You cannot stop the inevitable," it hissed. Lyra raised the heartstone. "Watch me." She slammed it onto a pedestal that rose from the floor at her command. Instantly, the Genesis vault activated. A wave of energy erupted outward, not destructive, but transformative. The raiders' grafted vines turned to ash. Their armor cracked and fell away. One by one, they collapsed, not dead, but changed. Humanoid again, confused, afraid. But the leader resisted. It lunged for Lyra, claws extended. Joran moved without thinking. He threw himself between them. The claws raked across his chest, tearing through fabric and flesh. Pain exploded through him, but he grabbed the figure's wrist and twisted, using its momentum to slam it into the pedestal. The moment the leader touched the heartstone, something broke inside it. The mask cracked. Beneath it was a face Joran recognized. "Kale?" he gasped. The name slipped out before he could stop it, though he'd sworn never to speak it again. But this wasn't the Kale he'd known in the Coalition. This was a ghost wearing his face, eyes hollowed by years of obsession and grafting. "Joran?" Kale's voice cracked, human for the first time. You're still alive?" "Barely," Joran grunted, clutching his bleeding chest. Kale looked at his own hands, now trembling, the vines receding. I didn't mean to. They promised me purpose. A way to heal the galaxy after the wars. But it was a lie. The bloom, it doesn't want masters. It wants partners." Lyra stepped forward, placing a hand on Kale's shoulder. "Then choose to be one." For a long moment Kale stood still. Then he turned to the remaining raiders, now dazed, unarmed, and raised his voice. "Stand down. The mission is over." They obeyed. The Genesis vault pulsed gently, as if in approval. But their victory was short-lived. A new tremor shook the chamber. Not from below, but from above. The ceiling cracked. Through the fissure, the obsidian hull of the flagship descended, its underbelly opening like a maw. "They're going to collapse the moon," Lyra realized in horror. "Bury the vault forever." "We can't let them," Joran said, struggling to his feet. "The Heartstone has to stay active." "There's only one way," Kale said quietly. "Someone must stay behind to anchor the resonance, to keep the vault stable while the rest escape." Silence fell. Joran looked at Lyra. She looked back, her eyes full of unspoken words. "No," he said. "Not this time." But Kale stepped forward. "It should be me. I caused this. Let me fix it." Before anyone could argue, he placed both hands on the heartstone. Green light enveloped him. His body began to dissolve, not into ash, but into light, into roots, into song. He became part of the vault, his consciousness merging with the bloom's network. The chamber stabilized. A hidden passage opened in the wall, a tunnel leading to the surface. "Go," Kale's voice echoed, now part of the wind, part of the stone. "Carry the bloom forward, not as a weapon, not as a tool, as a promise." Joran and Lyra ran. Behind them, the moon began to collapse, ice and crystal folding inward as the obsidian flagship retreated. Its mission failed. They emerged onto the surface just as the last of the Genesis vault vanished beneath a wave of molten ice. The wisp chirped sadly, then nuzzled Lyra's hand. Their skiff was gone. But in the distance, a signal blinked on Joran's salvaged wristcom. Faint, but clear. The Free Colonies Alliance had received his distress call. A rescue ship was inbound. As they waited in the violet-tinged twilight, Lyra leaned against Joran, her head on his shoulder. "You came for fruit," she said softly, "and got a war, a widow, and a world-saving seed," he replied, wincing as he shifted his wounded chest. "Best market trip of my life." She laughed. A real laugh, warm and bright against the cold stars. Above them, the gas giant turned slowly, its storms swirling like ancient eyes watching over them. And deep in Lyra's pocket, the heartstone pulsed gently, already whispering of the next node, the next world waiting to bloom. The fight wasn't over. The Obsidian fleet still roamed the stars. The Sovereign Council's betrayal festered. But for now, in the quiet between battles, two souls, human and alien, scarred but unbroken, stood together, breathing the same air, sharing the same hope. And somewhere, In the vast dark between galaxies, the bloom dreamed of green. Weeks later, under the twin suns of a newly awakened world, its deserts now veiled in young forests and its skies washed clean by the first true rains in centuries, Joran and Lyra stood hand in hand before a gathering of humans, Vexians, and freed raiders turned guardians. The Heartstone rested in the soil at their feet, already sprouting into a sapling whose leaves shimmered with the colors of both their worlds. There were no grand speeches, no medals, no titles, just quiet joy, shared bread, and laughter that echoed through the trees like wind through chimes. Kale's name was spoken with honor, not as a soldier or a traitor, but as the one who chose redemption when it mattered most. And when the stars came out that night, Joran slipped a ring of woven bloomvine onto Lyra's finger, and she kissed him beneath the boughs of the first true tree of the new age. They never went back to the market for fruit again, because now, every morning, they woke to a world that grew sweeter by the day.